G'day viewers, how are you? Made it to the end of another week. Well done everyone, and welcome to a weekend edition of TFU, looking at what's totally fucked up in the world. And I'll tell you what, I did a live stream just the other day with Kevin, and you should go and check it out if you haven't. I mirrored it on my channel, but Kevin Logan's got it on his channel where we hosted it. It was a lot of fun, and it highlighted the rest of the world is both noticing and taking some comfort from how cooked Australian politics is. I mean, you know, US has got Trump and that whole fucking shit show. Britain's got Brexit. We've got just garbage. It's so hard to articulate how this government is falling apart. Speaking of cook, just stick a fork in the government. They are done. There will be a federal election sometime in the next 2-3 months, May at the latest, and 90% likely the government is going to cop a spectacular beating in the election. Look, nothing's for sure, and you wouldn't want to totally count all your chickens before they're hatched, but the overwhelmingly likely scenario is they lose about 20 seats. Brief bit on Australia's Parliament. We have a Westminster-style Parliament. The lower house has 150 seats. To form government in your own right, your party or coalition has to have a majority of seats. And the current government used to have a majority of one, but because of some resignations and some by-elections, they've progressively lost seats. They now actually only hold 73 out of 150 seats in the Parliament, which makes them a minority government. They've only got a couple months to run, so the independents said, you know what, we're not going to block supply, we're not going to force an early election, we'll just let it go, basically. We won't support a no-confidence vote in this government. It would be kind of, while it would be funny, it'd be a wasted exercise with only a couple months to go. So, they're going to have an election. In all probability, they will lose at least 20 seats. The Labor opposition only has to pick up 6 or 7 to win. They're probably going to pick up at least 15 or 20. The government is also likely to lose some more seats to independents. So a best case scenario for this government is seriously losing 15 to 20 seats. It's at the extreme end, but not impossible. They could lose 40 seats. They could get copper pasting of historic proportions. So the question people want to know, well, basically, is it my imagination or is Australian politics totally fucked? Not your imagination. Totally fucked up. And how did it get there? Well, there's kind of a series of events that built up to the shit show we're seeing now. And it actually goes back to the previous Labor government. The thing that hardly ever happens in Australian politics is a sitting government basically revolts against their party leader, the Prime Minister, and says, we're removing you from that job. There are occasions where the Prime Minister resigns, but it's had been incredibly rare for the Prime Minister to get rolled by his or her party. And what ended up happening, Kevin Rudd won election for Labor. For a whole bunch of reasons, he became quite unpopular with his own party. Namely, he was borderline impossible to work with. And the almost unprecedented steps happened of the party did a spill, removed him, and his deputy, Julia Gillard, was made Prime Minister. Now, Rudd took this super personally and spent the next couple of years actively undermining Gillard, which, despite what Rudd supporters say, she did not actually do to him when he was PM. He basically shot himself in the foot, but then he very maliciously and spitefully undermined her non-stop, and the media loved it and went along with it. The opposition loved it and fed the flames, and just before an election, he convinced the party to turn on Gillard, dump her, and he was Prime Minister again. Very briefly, because Tony Abbott as opposition leader was very effective as opposition leader. In the next election, gave Labor quite the pasting, and he swept to power as Prime Minister. Weirdly, he went from being a very effective opposition leader to a fucking terrible prime minister. Could achieve virtually nothing. He kept being argumentative and disruptive even though he was in charge, and the public lost faith in him very, very, very quickly. And to the extent where his arch nemesis within his own party, Malcolm Turnbull, turned on him and said, look at how he's lost like 50 popularity polls in a row. We're going to get creamed at the next election. Need to get rid of him and put me in. Which I was really surprised they would pull the same bullshit as Labor. I thought what Turnbull would do would wait for the election to happen, wherein an Abbott-led government was probably going to get crushed, and then he'd just sweep in as opposition leader. What happened is he did it before the election. They copped a really bad swing, but squeaked in with a one-seat majority. So he's still Prime Minister. But then he was no more interesting than Abbott. He wasn't as destructive, but he was useless. And he lost dozens and dozens of opinion polls in a row. So the extreme right wing of the party, Abbott was from the extreme right of the Conservative Party, launched a coup against Turnbull with a terrible, terrible, terrible person called Peter Dutton, often referred to as the racist potato. A, because he's racist as fuck. B, because he has this weird featureless head that looks like a potato with a couple of holes in it. And in a surprise turn of events, although the spill went ahead, Dutton didn't have the numbers, and Scott Morrison got voted in as Prime Minister. Now, the Australian public made it clear before they rolled Turnbull they were sick of this shit. So I was stunned they did it, despite the fact there was overwhelming evidence. The public has the shits with you, but they really have the shits with this shifting leaders thing. Sidebar, when people go, I didn't vote for him as Prime Minister, that shits me, because unless you're in the Parliamentary Party, no, you didn't vote for them as Prime Minister. You do not vote for Prime Minister. You vote for your local member. The party with the majority forms government and their leader is Prime Minister. The public does not vote for Prime Minister. It's not a presidential system. To a lesser extent, your vote may be influenced by who's the leader of the party, because they're the dominant voice in what policy will be, but they're not the only voice. It's not a presidential system. The Prime Minister doesn't, well, it's unwise for a Prime Minister to unilaterally declare things, because the party can turn on them and go, well, no, you're not doing that. So, you don't vote for Prime Minister, but it might influence your vote. But also, surveys have shown it almost never does. People vote for parties, not the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister's a figurehead. Side note. But anyway, the public is really sick of this shit, and they've made it clear that these guys are gone. Like, they almost lost the last election. And it's not for the traditional reasons. Like, you can argue the economy is doing reasonably well. You can argue that this government has achieved a couple of things they wanted to do. But people are just sick of them. It's like a fucking clown show. And again, this is borderline unprecedented to me. I am not a young person. I remember several decades of Australian politics, and it's rare that a party has been on the wane just because people are going, no, we're just fucking sick of you. It's normally been because of economic reasons or for policy reasons or not. That is not really why this government's going out. If parties were being measured purely on economic terms, they might do quite well. They're not going to do well. They're going to do really poorly because people are just fucking sick of them. So there is that. The rotating prime ministers got us to this point. But this government has far bigger problems than that. Bigger, you say, but didn't you say that alone is going to get them out of power? Yeah, but what has been happening, it's not just the public who sees the writing on the wall. Many members of the parliament clearly understand they're going to cop a fucking pasting at the next election. And you see, the thing is, an election campaign is a stressful, intense experience for the participants, particularly if you lose. If it's your job and you lose your job, that sucks. Not that I'm saying I have any sympathy for politicians, even the ones I like, but, you campaign your little heart out and you lose, and that means losing your job. It's not just a popularity contest. It's not just people saying, we don't like you. It's, you don't have a job. And so an increasing number of government MPs, not just MPs, ministers are saying, you know what, I'm not competing at the next election. I quit. I'll see out this parliamentary term, then I'm gone. It is really obvious they're saying, no, this ship is sinking and this particular rat is jumping because I'm not going through the stress and trauma of an election campaign just to lose. Fuck that, I'm out. They lost 3 ministers in 1 week. Forget the opposition doing a vote of no confidence in the government. This is the party itself having a very strong vote of no confidence in their own future. And just this week, one of their most senior ministers, Foreign Minister Julie Bishop, said she was out. And that was big. I kind of thought it was going to happen. She's one of the longest serving members of the party. She's one of the few who could be considered popular with the public. I seriously expected her to stay on, and then when Morrison copped a pasting in the election, she would just sweep in to the role as party leader in opposition and have hopes of winning power down the line. But she has just gone, no, I'm done, out. So now they've had 4 ministers in the last month. These are the senior members of the party going, I have no faith in the future of this party. Fuck it. I'm out. It's like, and the public is picking up what they're laying down. The public is picking up, this party is in the shit right now. And on top of that, it's like, you'd think they'd try really hard to promote how good they are. But all that's been coming out in the last couple of weeks is acts that, well, they might not be criminal corruption, but they don't sound squeaky clean. They seem quite corrupt. We've seen literally billions of dollars awarded in contracts to companies that, surprise, surprise, turn to be run by people who are either major party donors, close friends of the party, or employ current or former members of the party, or current members of the party have major shareholdings in these things. Where things like the finance minister, one of the very top ministers in the government, found out he'd been given a free holiday by a travel company called Hello World, that's a major donor to the Liberal Party. The guy who runs the company is in the Liberal Party. I think he's their treasurer of their party. And after the finance minister had a free trip on this company was awarded a huge government contract that the finance minister's department had oversight of. Now, he said, A, he wasn't involved in the decision. B, he didn't know he'd been given a free holiday, free flights by this company. He said, as soon as I knew, I paid it back. Really? Is that how it works? Is that how it works? Talk to people who've been harassed by Centrelink, the people who provide dole payments. If there's a perception that they have been overpaid, do they get a nice simple sort it out? No, they get harassed into the ground. And this, again, not necessarily actual criminal corruption, but it doesn't really pass a sniff test, does it? And the same thing was involved with our ambassador in the US, Joe Hockey, who's a former senior Liberal Party minister. He's a big shareholder in the same company, and he was, surprise, surprise, his department was involved in giving another big contract to them. And we've had $500 million government contracts given to companies that, again, have links to the Liberal Party, and they turn out to be registered to a boat shed on Kangaroo Island. That, by the way, is neither a slang term. It's not a term for a weird sexual act in Australia. I can almost imagine, did you have a bit of the boat shed up Kangaroo Island? No, it was literally registered in a boat shed on Kangaroo Island, and they got a $500 million contract. We have a company that got $500 million to look after the barrier reef, when investigation shows they have neither the resources nor the experience to do anything here. It's basically billions of dollars being thrown around, government ministers time and time again being shown to either be disturbingly close to the people getting the money, or lying about what they're doing, or, you know, just being buddy-buddy with the people they're handing out hundreds of thousands, if not billions of dollars to. And this is someone that's already staggering around, looked at as just being garbage by the Australian population. So, yeah, if you were worried, whether you're the US or Britain or somewhere else whose politics I'm not that familiar with, if you were worried you were the only people with fucked up politics, shitty politicians, and a public who just can't wait to exert some fucking punishment on these politicians, you're not. It's here, it's there, it's everywhere. It's just a question of whose is actually the worst.